Came back from vacation with a vengeance. So shout out to you, Case Study. Case Study actually shared a video from CBS. And he's talking to Summer Lee. And she says a couple things that I do agree with. But let's hear what was said.
Congresswoman, you said it would be good to revive the George Floyd Policing Act, but we're so far past that right now, we really need to kind of escalate the conversation faster. What do you mean? What are you calling for?
So let me be really clear. There is a proliferation of disinformation and bias in conversations about crime and conversations about policing. And to be very clear, police violence is crime. We cannot say that we care about crime, but then do nothing, choose to do nothing over and over and over when the crime is committed by a police officer. There are statistics that show that less than 2% of police officers who are engaged in the misconduct are ever indicted at all. And while we can all celebrate that 5 Black police officers, right, and let it not escape us that it was only when they were Black that there was swift action, and there was a 6th who was not Black, and there was not swift action, that we can say that Tyree should be alive. So should Tatiana Jefferson. So should Antoine Rose II from my district. So should Mike Brown. So should Philando Castile. They should all be alive. So when we're talking about crime and we're talking about how we're going to solve it, when I say that we need to change the conversation, we need to acknowledge that public safety does not begin with policing. Public safety begins with investments. It begins with addressing our own implicit and explicit biases in policymaking and education and appropriations.
So when the president...
So basically, I mean, that was a good answer. I'm not going to lie. That was a good answer. A lot of times, and I may get some flack for this, but it is what it is. A lot of times people will talk about gun control. And they'll say, we need common sense gun control. They never put police in that equation. They never want gun control for police. And it's like, wait a minute. The shooting deaths that happen are also due to them. They are literally killing us left and right. Wow, that's a loud plane. But yeah, they don't ever talk about them. They'll talk about people in, mass shootings. They'll talk about gun deaths in inner city neighborhoods and things like that. But they don't ever talk about police when it comes to gun reform. Even though they're the ones doing some of the murdering. Just a thought.
It talks about reviving George Floyd.
Begins with addressing our own implicit and explicit biases in policymaking and education and appropriations.
So when the president talks about reviving George Floyd Policing Act, you're saying not as it's currently written. You want more measures.
Absolutely. I want us to be intentional at every step about addressing racial bias, about addressing poverty, about addressing crime, and about addressing police violence.
I think Representative Lee is absolutely.
So are you saying, Representative Lee, that you think we should defund the police? Is that what you're saying? I mean, if you're saying that, I agree. But is that what you're saying? Just shape your mouth into defund the police. Defund the police. Go ahead. You can say it. You can say it. It's okay. It's okay. Nobody's going to hurt you. Well, your party might, politically. But the people will be behind you. Especially people in the hood. Yeah, won't be behind you. Because that means you want to reinvest into our areas. And by people in the hood, I'm not just talking about black people. I'm talking about white people in their hoods too. You don't think that they don't face the same things? Oh, yeah. They face the same thing. And guess what? A lot of them want to defund the police too because they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So, is that what you're saying? Come on, you can say it. Say it. Say it with your whole chest. I don't think she will, though.
Absolutely right. Listen, I would vote for the George Floyd Policing Act if it's on the floor tomorrow, but more needs to be done. Additional.
But the George Floyd Policing Act actually gives more money to the police. Why? That's an anathema to what needs to happen. I mean, if you're going to be giving more money to the police, then that's not defunding the police. Why are we giving more money to police when we should be taking money away from them, and that money invested should go towards us for housing, healthcare, food, education, actually improving the ecological environment of our areas that we live. Why are we talking about still voting for it? Why? What?
It won't be put on the floor tomorrow under Republican leadership,
Absolutely.
to be clear.
And that's why I want to be clear also with when our colleagues bring up that more should be done around this issue. The truth is that you look at a place like California and most of the country, we are actually safer today than we were 15, 20, or 30 years ago.
Why? Why is that? Is it because of police? Police only solve 2% of crime. All right, Robert.
Statistically. And so there's a lot of concerns around crime, and there should be. We all want to be safe. But we also got to look at the data and actually look at the facts. The truth is that every single election cycle, it just seems that there's a lot of focus on crime in inner cities. And the truth is that we are safer than we were 20 or 30 years ago.
But there was a spike in violent crime.
In New York State in particular, the reason there was a focus on crime by voters is because they didn't feel safe. You had people being pushed in front of oncoming subway.
Bullshit. Bullshit. You want to know why some voters are so concerned with crime? Let's look at the onset of how many of these corporate media, these local corporate media, constantly focus on crime and talk about how bad it is, when in reality, the crime rate has actually dropped. They're constantly talking about, oh, well, this person was shot, and this person was shot, and this person was raped, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wait a minute. It's actually a lot less than what it used to be. The problem is that you guys keep repeating the exact same story and making it seem like it's really bad when really it actually went down. Also, on top of that, the crime rate also tends to tick up because of the onset of poverty. So guess what? There's an answer for that. There is a really good answer for that. But the thing is that some of y'all don't want to address it, because that means if addressing it, then that means you're going to be taking some of your own power away and giving it to everybody else, which requires equity, equality, and inclusion, which y'all don't want. Y'all just can't stand having everybody have something good, because you guys need to be the ones that only have something good. You guys don't want everybody to have nice things. You only just want you to have nice things. And so then when everybody else wants to have nice things, it's like, oh my God, it's a crime wave, when really, if everybody had nice things all collectively, then we wouldn't need to take from each other. Why in the hell do I complain if I take one slice of cake, give it to 5 people, and then keep the rest of the cake for myself? Of course I'm going to be worried about somebody stealing some of my cake, because guess what? I gave a little sliver of cake to 5 people, and now I have the rest of the cake to myself. And guess what? What? I can't blame them for wanting to take some of the slices of the cake away from me, because I took most of the cake away. So why in the hell are we sitting here talking about crime for crime's sake, when really it's because of a huge chunk of the pie that's been taken away from people And so now they're fighting to get that pie. Guess what? That's all you need to do in order to get rid of it. Give them some more pie, man. Jeez Louise, these people make it sound like it's so complex when really it's actually quite simple.
Cars, you had people being stabbed in the street. By the way, the vast majority of victims of crime are Black and brown people.
Why?
So to act as though there's not a crime issue, I think is dismissing the fact that it is serious and people do not feel safe. And so, yes, we need to address the root causes of why someone may turn towards crime or why they may find themselves.
What is the root cause? Give us the root cause, bearded man.
It's part of a gang. But we also need to hold people accountable with the decisions that they make. And I think.
But the thing is that the decisions that they make are based on what? What are they based on? What is the factor that's making them make these decisions? That's the crazy part. You're creating the conditions in order for them to make these choices, and then you blame it on them for a systemic issue. Fix the issue, dude.
I think part of the problem here is that oftentimes it is very easy to go say law enforcement bad, but the vast
because they are. You want to know why? Because every single time someone who's actually a police officer tries to speak out, then guess what? They get vilified, they get ostracized, they even get attacked by their fellow police officers, and then they have to leave the force. So all the good cops that you want to talk about are gone. They're not police officers anymore. That means everybody else that says either does the wrong or they keep a tight lip on who does the wrong. So guess what? They all are wrong. ACAB, all cops are bad. Absolutely. So what are you talking about? Guess what? They are literally protecting their own. If they're and also remember, silence is violence. So if you're a police officer and you see your fellow officers doing bad, but you don't say anything, guess what? You're just as guilty as them. So when we say all cops, ACAB, we mean it. And then they say, oh, well, it's a bad apple. Finish the quote. Finish the quote. One bad apple does what? It spoils the whole bunch. Guess what? The whole entire bunch is spoiled. It's spoiled. Dear God.
The majority of people who are in law enforcement are good people. I come from a community that has
allegedly
strong law enforcement presence. 50% of households in my district have a cop, a firefighter, a first responder, or a veteran in them. They're good people, and they want to do right by our communities.
The vast majority of people in poor and working class neighborhoods are good people.
They are.
And they are victims of crime that we don't say anything about. For instance,
you can push a good person to do quote unquote bad things if you put them in a situation where they have no choice but to do bad things in order to survive. I'm going to say it again. You can push a good person to do bad things if you put them in an environment where they have to do bad things in order to survive. If you put them at a point to, a lot of these crimes are actually done under duress because they really have no choice but to do them in order to survive. You got a dude that's selling a brick on the side of the road. Is he doing that by choice? Is he putting himself at risk of being put in prison by choice? Is that just a free choice and goes, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to sell this because I want to get all this money just so that I can just have all this money. Whereas if you actually give them opportunity and take away the desperation, will they go the crime route? If they actually have true opportunity and no desperation, if they actually have a floor, an economic floor, then will they actually logically make the choice to still sell bricks on the side of the road? Hell no. Well, they won't need to. Take away the need to commit crimes and then the crimes will not be committed, or they will go drastically down. That's how it works. If I'm constantly in fear of my phone dropping to the floor, there's a couple of things I could do, right? Or not even my phone. Let's say this mug, right? Either I could put it in a place where it is a lot more difficult to drop, or I can just put it on the floor. If I sit it on the floor, the likelihood of it breaking is extremely low. Why? Because it's already on the floor. It can't fall from the floor. So if you give people a stable floor so that they won't fall, guess what? They don't fall, which means society doesn't have a breakdown. If you have society that doesn't have a breakdown, then guess what? That you won't have to worry about the crime that you're talking about. That's how it works. The more you know. And it's funny because I've never stepped foot in a college. I'm not college educated. I'm not. You guys want to go college educated? Go to Sammy. She's based and she's college educated. By the way, she's not going to be live today. She's watching this game, the big game. So I'll be on Due Dissidence at 4 p.m. today. So if you guys want to see more of me, then go to Due Dissidence channel, give them a sub, and you guys can see me there. By the way, did you like the stream? Give me a like. That's the crazy part. A lot of people just don't realize this. And this dude over here, Mr. Beardman, just doesn't get the concept for some reason.
Of crime that we don't say anything about. For instance,
Exactly. They want like to be protected.
For instance, there is no police presence when they're a victim of wage theft. We're not seeing anybody fear mongering.
I passed legislation,
awesome. And I would like to see it happen.
Okay, so he's completely flipped the argument. So she's like, well, nobody talks about wage theft. They're being stolen from. And he's like, well, I passed legislation. Why are you getting so defensive, bro? What? Well, hold up. This dude just got defensive. He's pressed. And this is a Democrat coming after him. Can you imagine if RBN actually came after and talked to this guy? Oh my God. This dude is pressed. Hey, hang on.
For instance, there is no police presence when they're a victim of wage theft. We're not seeing anybody fear mongering.
I passed legislation. Who gives a shit, Sherlock? People are still being subject to wage theft.
I passed legislation.
Awesome. And I would like to see it happening here, because what we don't see when we're talking about crime, we're really talking about white collar crime. We're really talking about ways in which we're going to hold corporate criminals accountable. We're really taking any strides in any level of government to do anything about that. But we continue to talk about the crimes of desperation, and particularly the crimes in marginalized communities.
Now, while Summer Lee does have a good point, here's the thing. A lot of those white collar crimes that she's talking about, people like Mr. Bearded Man is not going to do anything about it, because they're the ones who actually get the money for their campaigns from these people that do the white collar crimes. So he's not going to go after them. Not for real. And then, according to Summer Lee, guess what? Your party also gives money from those same people, so they're not going to do it. Also, if you're going to be talking about your party, you need to go to the president, Joe Biden, for his perpetuation of the 94 crime bill. You need to go to the father of mass incarceration, who is the president in your party. But I don't see you calling him out. So if you're going to be talking about it, let's talk about it. Now, I wrote some notes. And I hope this makes sense, because this is why I entitled it State of Crime. Here's what I wrote down. I said, people want to talk about crimes of individuals, but they never want to talk about crimes of the state. The crime rate has gone up when it comes to the crimes of the state. The difference is that the state violence that has risen, homelessness, wage theft, hunger, lack of education, housing insecurity, environmental degradation, lack and denial of clean water, etc., are all violence of the state. They focus on the problem of the individual, but the real problem is the system. It needs to be dismantled and rebuilt to serve everyone, not capital. So, meaning, and people will be like, oh, well, these are corporations. Who does the corporations own? Who do they own? They own the state. So guess what? It's state violence that is perpetuating the crime. Because guess what? Most people individually aren't committing crimes like that anymore. And then the one-shots that happen are constantly being recycled in the news over and over and over. Oh my God, this happened. Oh my God, this happened. When really, in reality, the violence that's perpetually happening to all of us is on behalf of the state. It's by the state on behalf of corporations. That's the problem. The crime is 7,000 people being laid off by Disney, even though they have record profits. That's the crime. That's the crime. You being evicted, that's the crime. You being housing insecure, that's the crime. These people making hand over fist and then extracting all your labor value from you, that's the crime. The proxy war in Ukraine, that's the crime. The proxy war in Yemen, that's the crime. There are crimes being committed, but it's by the people who have the authority. It's not you. It's not me. Y'all, look, they're pissing their pants over somebody stealing a jar of Similac, a can of Similac. Meanwhile, you got these people who are doing stock buybacks and laying off thousands of people. What? You got to be shitting me. You literally have police officers shooting people, beating people to death, or maiming them, and people want to focus on, if we looted a Target. It's crazy. Maybe if we had all the things that we were supposed to have as far as a base, we wouldn't need to do that. It's not an individual problem. It is systemic. And so when people want to talk about, it's funny. I find it funny when people want to talk, everybody wants to talk about personal responsibility, but nobody wants to talk about community responsibility. The fact that we actually have a duty to each other. That's the thing. Thank you so much to Case Study for this clip. I have a couple things to share with you in regards to this. Want to talk about crime? Let's talk about crime. All right. Mappingpoliceviolence.org. Great site. I recommend it. Says police have killed 1,174 people in the U.S. so far in 2022. That's 1,174 murders. Where's the outrage? Where is the outrage? This is crime. That's crime. Just because the person has a badge and a gun doesn't mean it's still not any less crime. That's homicide. 1,174 homicides. Everybody wants to talk about, they're the good ones. No, they're not. We've seen time and time again, and it doesn't matter the color they are. Because look, what happened with Tyree Nichols? Guess what? There were 5 police officers that were black. Guess what? Some of the other police officers were not black, they were white. So it goes across racial lines as far as how bad police are. So please don't come at me with that. So there's crimes being perpetuated by the state. Let's also talk about civil asset forfeiture, where they're literally stealing from you in broad daylight in 4K. So they're also committing theft. Let's also talk about the rape. There's 250,000 rape cases in the police departments that have not been shown or tested within this entire country. How many of them rape kits have the DNA of some of these police officers in them? Over 40% of police officers have admitted to spousal abuse. Admitted to it. Can you imagine how many of them have not admitted it? Can you imagine? Crimes by the state. Let's go to the next one. Homelessness in America. This is from security.org, says 582,462 individuals are experiencing homelessness in America, an increase about 2,000 people since the last complete census conducted in 2020. About 30% of people without homes are experiencing chronic patterns of homelessness. This means they've been without homes for more than 12 months or have experienced extended periods of extended homelessness over the past 3 years. Most states saw their homeless populations rise since 2019, including 4 with a tally more than double: Delaware, Vermont, Louisiana, Maine. 60% of individuals experiencing homelessness are male, though unsheltered homelessness rose by 5% among women and girls. More than a quarter of those experiencing homelessness are with their families and children. Much progress has been made in reducing homelessness among military veterans. Homelessness in this population declined by 11% over the past 2 years and has been halved since 2010. So, homelessness, that's state violence. That's state violence, because housing is a human right. And you're leaving these people out to the elements, to the heat and to the cold, to the rain. That's state violence on behalf of the corporations. Let's go to another one. Another one. Want to talk about state violence? All right, let's talk about state violence. It says new research finds 2.7 million households receive eviction filings annually. Annually. A bunch of people are being evicted. This is from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. A study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, estimating eviction prevalence across the United States, offers new estimates of the rates of eviction filings and number of households threatened with evictions from 2000 to 2018. Using both court-issued records and proprietary data, the authors of the study model eviction court filings in each state and find that between 2000 and 2018, 3.6 million eviction cases were filed annually on average. Why do evictions happen? It is because an eviction happens because a person has not paid their rent. Well, why have they not paid their rent? Is it just because they just don't want to pay it? They actually have the money to pay it, and they're doing pretty well. They just don't want to pay it. Most of the time, it's because they can't afford it. And so, therefore, they have evictions. Housing is a human right. People being evicted is state violence. People want to talk about violence? All right, we're going to talk about it. Let's go to the last one. More state violence, because states aren't actually helping people. Wage theft is a much bigger problem than robbery. The value of wages earned but not received compared to the value of property stolen in robberies in 2012. This was in 2012, 341 million in robberies, and wage theft $933 million. This was 2012. This was 11 years ago. This is from the Economic Policy Institute. Wage theft is a much bigger problem than other forms of theft, but workers remain mostly unprotected. And yet, people want to talk about individual crime. So this is why I call it the state of crime. The state is committing crime on behalf of the corporations. Even if they aren't committing the crime themselves, they are looking the other way while these corporations commit crimes against people. And you wonder why many of us are turning to socialism and communism? Because capitalism is showing its whole ass. And now we see it for what it really is. See, like I said, I had No Krejcivik on my channel yesterday from Midwestern Marks, and one of the things that we spoke about was that capitalism is showing itself to be wholly inadequate. See, back in the day, during the Great Migration to the suburbs, for a lot of white people, especially, capitalism was popping. It was gone. Everybody was like, yeah, let's go out into the suburbs. Then they start having, nicer lives, and, they were able to afford a household on one income. Things were gravy. But then guess what? Capitalists saw that everybody was living gravy in this area, and they started clawing things back, saying, nope, we want this money back again. And so guess what? Then they got their boy, they got Ronald Reagan in there, and they start clawing back even more. Then comes Bill Clinton, clawing back more. Then comes George W. Bush, clawing back more. Then comes Barack Obama, clawing back more. Then it comes Donald Trump, clawing back more. Now we have Joe Biden. And so because of that, now we're all seeing the austerity and the degradation of our society, because this is the true nature of capitalism. This is how it works. And some people go, no, it's corporatism. Actually, no. Because corporatism is capitalism. It is that drawing of resources and pooling of resources away from people in order to put it up at the top. And that's how it works. And so people will have commit crime of opportunity and desperation, or a lack of opportunity rather, and desperation, in order to survive. And so even some of the people who you were regard as the most depraved in our society, like people like drug dealers and whatnot, I got something to tell you. Most people who actually are dealing drugs on the streets are actually doing it under duress, because they feel that that's the only option that they truly have in order to lift themselves up. I talked about duress last week on RBN Live. Let's go into it again, because I explained it before. Let's explain it again. What is duress? Whether you're selling drugs or you're selling coffee, a lot of you guys are in duress. A lot of us are in duress. It says duress, threats, violence, constraints, or other action brought to bear on someone to do something against their will or better judgment. Also synonymous with coercion, compulsion, force, pressure, intimidation. Law definition says constraint illegally exercised to force someone to perform an act. The system makes it so that people would have to do either legal or illegal things in order to survive. And then some would accept a wage that is a starvation wage, or if they don't see that as viable, they may see a more viable option to do something by illegal means in order to make more so that they can survive better. So this is what they do. And is it the fault of the individual? No, it is a systemic issue. You have to change the system in order for people to survive and thrive. And we explain this all the time, but people look at us like we're crazy.